I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Hey, welcome to HoopSpeak Live. I'm your bespectacled host, Beckley Mason. With me today, Zach Harper. We got no Ethan today, but we do have a very special guest, Rob Mahoney, friend of the program. Really excited to have him back on. We're going to start just by jumping right into the Rudy Gay trade. If you don't know the details, it's a 6-player trade, 3 teams. Here's what everyone gets. Toronto gets Rudy Gay and Hamed Haddadi. Detroit gets Jose Calderon, and Memphis gets Ed Davis, Austin Day, and Tayshaun Prince. So that's the groundwork. Now we got to talk about how all this went down with Rob, who killed this trade from Toronto's perspective, and Zach, who claims to be the last Rudy Gay fan left on Earth. I don't know if that's fair. He's got a couple family members, but explain. Let's get Rob on here soon, and then we'll explain exactly why you are still bullish on Rudy Gay.
Well, the reason I'm bullish on Rudy Gay is because he's still a very good basketball player. He has been crap this year. He's been worse than crap. Whatever worse than crap. He's been darkoed this year. It's been really bad. But he's still a very talented basketball player. He's badly used in a horrible, horrible offensive system in Memphis. And I think he'll have a little bit of a chance to play better isolation sets, play in the post a little bit more. I think he just has more options to operate that he didn't have in Memphis. And I think that the money isn't even bad for him. They have bad contracts on that team. I don't think his is one of them. And I think they can easily finagle a couple of players, Amnesty, Bargnani, really get away from that luxury tax. And the key to all this is that Brian Colangelo has to be the next to go. That's where I like it, is that if Brian Colangelo is gone, I think they can build this team with Rudy Gay in a very positive and easy manner.
Rob, I gotta cut you off. We're having trouble hearing you. Sorry, I don't know if your mic has disappeared. All right. This is a matter of moments ago. We were just doing this and it was working fine.
Yep.
But I do want to address the Memphis offense situation and how Gay might fit in Toronto. It's a really interesting question. DeRozan at the 2, and Gay at the 3 is, I think, what you'll probably see a lot of. But it would be very interesting to see if they do try to play Gay at the 4, where he's like Durant, like LeBron, one of those super freak giants who can move like a wing, but is actually he's bigger than Dante Cunningham. Dante Cunningham plays 4 or 5 all the time. I think that I've seen him body up with LaMarcus Aldridge and look great. And a lot of what Rudy Gay does as a wing is pretty good, but not special. But similar to Carmelo, when he becomes a power forward, and now he's beating all these guys down in transition. He's for a shooter a better 4 than 3. It could be interesting. Who knows if he'll be willing to do that.
He posted last year, he didn't play a ton of power forward minutes, but he posted an 18.9 PER at the power forward position according to 82 games. Like he can play it, and he's one of the best post-up players every year in the NBA. He doesn't do it a ton, but he is very good in the post, and I think you can run a lot of pick and rolls, a lot of cross screens, and get him matched up against smaller guys and just let him go to work. He's very good. And Toronto, #1 team scoring points per possession in isolation sets. What does Rudy Gay like to do? Isolate. I think it's perfect for him.
Yeah, it is nice when you have a point guard like Calderon to feed that play and then to fade to the weak side and make open threes, stretch the defense. That's going to be a big loss for them because I do think eventually Lowry obviously has to take over, but Calderon is the type of player who can kind of guide Rudy, and you've seen him with DeRozan, figuring out how to feed him when he comes off the curl, and Toronto does do a pretty nice job of spacing the floor on their curl and kind of pin down sets. And DeRozan is really aggressive when he catches and turns the corner. It'll be interesting, to find out whether or not Rudy Gay wasn't hitting the corner like that because he would catch and turn, and you would see Gasol and Randolph just chilling on either low block, and he's like, "Well, thanks, guys." Or if it's one of these things where he's just not being aggressive enough.
I do, Kevin Arnovitz tweeted, like, where is the ball movement going to come from with Toronto? And that's a very valid question. It's almost like they're not going to be successful, and they probably don't want to be successful anyway because they want to try to keep their pick. But I wonder if a dribble drive offense, like exclusive offense, would be the best for them because it's just a lot of rip and goes with a lot of players that can pretty much only rip and go.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious about that. You have to have someone to shoot it on the weak side. Rob, to catch you up, we were talking about Rudy Gay as a possible four. What do you think about that?
I mean, the thing that separates. First of all, am I actually coming through okay this time? I'm in this universe. That was good. Okay. The thing I think separates Gay from a lot of the other guys that we talk about shifting up from 3 to 4, Melo, Kevin Durant, whoever, is that a lot of those guys have elite shot blockers that play alongside them. Like you can play Melo at the 4 when you have Tyson Chandler, and as the Knicks are showing, even that may only get you a below average defense. And so that's going to be the real concern with them. I mean, a lot of people like Jonas Valanciunas. Amir Johnson, I'm a bigger fan than most, but those aren't the kinds of guys you can play next to Rudy Gay, who by all means is kind of an average-ish defensive player at the 4 and get the kind of defensive returns that you want. And so I think it can work offensively just because he has more range than a lot of 4s in the league. He's going to be able to kill guys with quickness in that regard, no doubt about that. I mean, that's a good way to kind of jumpstart his isolations and to really bump up their efficiency. But defensively, I think he could get killed. And he's the kind of guy who, if you make him work against 4s possession after possession, and it's not even getting posted up, just like fighting for offensive rebounds, this kind of box out, just sticking with those guys is a lot more taxing than people estimate.
I think that's a really good point, but moving forward, aren't you banking on Jonas Valanciunas being the rim protector in Toronto? I mean, that seems like there's your Tyson Chandler, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely banking on that. The thing is that, Gay is under contract for 2 more seasons after this one, and do you expect Jonas Valanciunas 2 years down the line to be that good that quickly? I mean, he shows a
I
lot of good defensive potential, but eh.
I expect him to be that good tomorrow.
Well, case closed. Let's pack it up here.
All right, so you detailed exactly why this trade is, I guess, sort of a bummer for Toronto fans, but and a lot of that had to do with the long term issues. Like what's the plan here? And assuming that they want to keep making moves, that they're not going to stay with their kind of current odd alignment of players, what type of things do you think they can do to get to kind of maximize some of the personnel that they're committed to?
I mean, I think DeRozan will have to go at some point, just because I don't see him and Gay being a very tenable long-term combination. And so down the line, maybe a year or two, they're gonna have to be shopping him to see what's available. And Kyle Lowry is a great player and a great dribble drive threat. Maybe a little leaning towards the shot side of kind of the shot pass spectrum, which makes him a weird fit with Gay too. And then like that's going to be the really interesting situation to me when you have a team that is projected to be bumping up against the tax next year with Lowry on one of the great bargain deals in the NBA. If you pay that guy even close to market value, the Raptors could be a tax-paying team for 43 wins, and that's just not a very acceptable situation, especially given the Raptors' ownership. I mean, this isn't a conventional ownership by any means. They could just choose when they want to pay the tax. Like the public nature of it makes it a lot more complicated than that. And so in terms of what this team can actually maneuver with, I think they have some pieces they could potentially deal. I think Amir Johnson could be a valuable piece for a lot of teams. I think Ed Davis was one of those chips that they probably should have fought a little harder to hold on to, because DeRozan's going to have to be the next guy in line, assuming, as Colangelo said last night, basically on the NBA TV broadcast, that Bargnani's already next in line to go before that.
Right. Moving to the Pistons, who I think are suddenly, so the Pistons are like 3.5, 4 games out of the 8th spot with almost half the season left. They just got better, I think. I think that if they're playing better and better as the season has gone on. Are the Pistons like kind of gonna make the playoffs? Are they gonna surpass Boston? There's a few issues here. One, are the Pistons really like much better? And then two, are Philadelphia and Boston gonna are they just gonna keep kind of crapping out?
I think the dynamic in Detroit could shift a lot because right now you have a case where their subs kind of anchor them a lot. They're a really good offensive second unit. They provide a lot of firepower with that Will Bynum and Andre Drummond combo and all those shooters. And so you have one of these things where if they place Jose Calderon in the starting lineup, which by all means is what you should do from a basketball standpoint, he's a far better player than Brandon Knight, then potentially you're going to be putting Brandon Knight in the role that Will Bynum was playing before. And I don't think he's as well suited for that. I don't think he's as good dribble driving off the pick and roll. I think it could create like a weird backward situation where Jose Calderon makes the starters much, much better than they were because he's going to be feeding Monroe. He's going to be feeding all these guys for better shots, and he's a much better shooter, which will help tremendously with their floor spacing. But, then the second unit, I think, could experience some of that, the backlash of not playing Bynum as much and relying on Knight to play a role that he may not be all that comfortable with.
This is what you do. You move Brandon Knight to the shooting guard. He's not a point guard anyway. This guy's more of a gunner. And yes, you have, I would say, a not good defensive backcourt with Calderon and Knight, but you've got Andre Drummond there with his 8 arms and his fire rockets for legs, just springing up and swatting away shots left and right. There's no way I'm going to let Ethan take away this Andre Drummond love. He was mine first, and now he can't defend himself.
This is the perfect time to bring it up. Well, this is an interesting question because you're right. Knight is kind of a weird piece in all of this now. And something that Brett Cormanos brought up to me that I'm just going to steal and kind of credit to him is that, hey, Curtis, is that...
That's a compliment, really.
Thank you. Is that the market for Josh Smith is not very strong. And they might be able to package something like Knight and a pick, Knight and something else for someone like Josh Smith. And then your front line of the future in Detroit is Smith, Monroe, and Drummond with Calderon running the point and, Stuckey as your kind of gunner off the bench. This is like kind of getting exciting.
Almost getting exciting. Because then, I mean, if you're Atlanta, if you're Atlanta, what's the motivation for, you already have Jeff Teague, who is Brandon Knight, but kind of better. So why would you take Brandon Knight if you have Jeff Teague?
Because they play 2 guards anyway. Why would you want, Lou Williams is hurt. Devin Harris is not much of a player anymore. They need ball handlers badly.
No, for sure. But that's assuming that that Danny Ferry really cares about this season at all, which he kind of, I think he's pleased. He's pleasantly surprised. He'll pat himself on the back if they make the playoffs and win a game. But, it's pretty obvious at this point by the way he's played his hand that he's not playing to have Brandon Knight push them into the playoffs, and then plus, the exchange of taking away Josh Smith there. I agree that the trade market won't be overwhelming for him. And so it just depends on if Ferry has any interest in re-signing Smith and, if he thinks it's even possible. Because if it's not, then sure, you take Brandon Knight to pick and you go on your merry way. But, if they could put together that front line, it would be absolutely awesome. And, it really would be like octopus arms on the back line. But I just don't know that it would necessarily work out that way.
The true shooting percentage of Josh Smith would give Andre Drummond a lot of chances for highlights. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be, and then it would just be another situation where everyone's getting really frustrated with Josh Smith for shooting too many jumpers. But I do want to get on the topic or get back to the topic of the Celtics. you wrote about them. The kind of not secret, but is that Rondo hasn't been making them significantly better this season when he's on the court. Um, do you think that they have enough gas to keep the to coast into the playoffs?
I mean, that's where this Calderon thing becomes really, really interesting because Philadelphia is not playing in a way that would signify that they're any kind of threat to this picture. And Boston, they've had their little moment here where they get to be plucky and they get to win this big game without Rondo and prove something to themselves and everyone else. But now is where it really starts in terms of them creating some kind of long-term offensive viability. And I think that Boston is really, really vulnerable, even more than some people believe. I think a lot of people still they look at that team, they look at the veterans, and they assume that this playoff spot's going to be theirs. Detroit is not a very good team, but Boston without Rondo isn't a very good team either. I mean, you're looking at a team that basically has to rely on Pierce and Garnett to be in overdrive at all times. I mean, those are going to be the guys who are orchestrating your offense. They have Kevin Garnett at the top of the key, basically feeding everyone, and that's a really problematic situation to be in when he's as old as he is and is being asked to do as much defensively as he is.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm curious about that because it is, it's true that you would imagine that they're gonna have to do more, but it's almost like haven't they already been doing more than they should have been doing? Like how much, how much hard, like bigger can the burden get for them? And I wonder, like, how do we explain why Rondo doesn't make the offense significantly better? Is it because he holds the ball too much and only looks for these 2-point jumpers? Like, why wasn't he a bigger impact this season, even though he shot it well?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that's kind of tough to say because when you look at each of the individual variables, we're wrong about something. Like we say that Doc Rivers is a good tactical coach, and that there's no doubt that he draws up great individual plays. We said that Rondo is a really good playmaker and kind of this net positive force in terms of what he can contribute. And we say that Pierce and Garnett are still the kinds of guys who can contribute regularly for you. I mean, that may be the most suspect of the three, but at the same time, like between Doc and Rondo, there's something going on there that we're not quite accounting for. And I mean, it's possible that it's the way that he plays for passes. I mean, he hunts assists like nobody else in the NBA. But structurally, I mean, Boston runs some interesting stuff, but it's nothing really groundbreaking. And with the personnel that they have and the way that a lot of those pieces, I mean, Jason Terry and maybe even Courtney Lee, kind of at the top of that list, have underperformed, then you have to have something groundbreaking to make that work. With Pierce and Garnett being as old as they are.
yeah, I think that's the key for me is that Terry gives them nothing. They don't have really anybody to stretch the floor past 18 feet, and I think you can kind of just sink in against them. And I think it does matter that they don't go for offensive rebounds. I don't think that should be a focus for them, but the fact that they don't, it kills possessions that maybe if they eke out 2 or 3 extra buckets a game from it, I mean, how much better does their offense look, just from 2 or 3 baskets? And it makes you wonder, what do they have going forward? If Rondo is 2 years away from being back to his regular self, then KG's what, 39, 47 years old by then. Pierce is getting up there. I mean, what do they do? Do they blow it up?
I mean, at this point, I think you got to trade somebody. And Garnett's got the no trade clause, which makes that kind of impossible because the teams you would want to trade him to, he's not going to be happy with. So Paul Pierce is the really obvious play, assuming that you even think that highly of what Rondo's going to be able to do when he gets back. I mean, it's a really, really tough situation. Now you have all these mid-level deals on the books, which are the kind of things that when they pile up really kill a team's rebuilding efforts. So, they got to move somebody, but at this stage, I don't know what they really have to offer aside from Jared Sullinger, who, I mean, he's been good. He's had a really good season. He's improving, but how much is he really going to be able to accommodate what else they need to get rid of?
Crime that he didn't make the Rising Stars game, right? I mean, just how do you not have him in there? Everybody wants to see boxing out.
I think they want to see boxing out more than they want to see Tyler Zeller, so I guess there is some kind of argument there.
I want to talk about our boy. I think we can share him. I think this is the mature thing to do when talking about Jay Crowder. He kind of came out of the gates looking great. The team has gotten into a funk. How is Jay doing? Update the fam on him.
I mean, he's been fine. You know, it's the kind of things that you would expect from a rookie player. I think, you know, I'm definitely in this group that maybe expected a little more of him defensively. You know, having the college experience, having the particular positional situation that he did. But you know, it's a lot of the very basic stuff that he usually gets, you know, caught watching the ball, get beaten on a backdoor cut. Maybe thinks he's a little bit more of a spot up shooter than he should be. But then at the same time, doesn't really have some crazy, moves off the dribble. He just kind of drives straight into the rim, jumps, and hope that nobody goes up to contest him, which is, you know, I think a viable strategy in most pickup games, but maybe not so much in the NBA. So, I mean, that's where he's getting in trouble right now. I think Carlisle's still been pretty accommodating with him in terms of how much he's playing in, the situations he's playing him in. But there's no doubt, too, that Vince Carter playing some really good basketball hurts the opportunities and the kinds of chances that he gets, considering that Mayo and Marion and a lot of these other guys are kind of guaranteed roles.
Rob, why does Rick Carlisle hate Darren Collison so much? I mean, I feel like we use the word hate loosely on the internet, but I feel like there's actual hatred there.
Yeah, it's really strange. I mean, Darren Collison has been he's been incredibly shaky this year, like phenomenally shaky. But there's a very big divide between this player is shaky and I'm going to sign Derek Fisher to replace him, and that's kind of that's the canyon that Rick Carlisle has crossed over the course of this year. And now Mike James, and so I honestly don't know. I mean, Collison hasn't been perfect. He's really struggled to create. He's had problems with turnovers, but nothing really jumps out in terms of something that would justify the way Carlisle has reacted to him.
And how do you feel about Dirk's, I guess, rehabilitation through playing on the court? I mean, he looks like he's doing better.
Yeah, I mean, this most recent game against Portland, he looked a lot better. But other than that, I mean, it's been slow. And one of the things about Dirk is that he's always been praised as this really fast healer. He's come back from ankle sprains in like record time. He's had all these kind of minor injuries that seem to disappear immediately. And a lot of that's just because of the way he plays. You know, he doesn't need a lot of explosion in terms of getting to the rim. And in fact, he most of the time when he goes to the rim, he's just kind of going to draw a foul anyway. So it doesn't matter if he's a step slow or not. And so this has been a really different situation. I think it's maybe the age is catching up to him a little bit, but it's definitely been a more gradual process in terms of accommodating him and integrating him into the lineup. Just because he doesn't look comfortable. And at first it was he didn't want the shots at the end of games. Then it was he just really wasn't comfortable bearing the kind of offensive load they needed him to bear. And now he's looking more like his normal self. But they've already given up a little bit of the momentum that they had in terms of going for that 8th playoff spot. And it's definitely an open question with the Lakers kind of doing whatever it is they're doing of how that final 7-8 spot in the West is going to shake out.
The Spurs defense has really picked it up. Like they're looking scary good. They're shooting up the standings. What do you make of everything going on with the Spurs? Can they make this a playoff regularity?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And the Spurs are way even they're top of every power rankings right now. They're kind of still way off the radar because people expect the Clippers with Chris Paul and they expect the Thunder to be the best teams in the West and that to be the kind of optimal Western Conference final. I think San Antonio is right in the thick of that thing. And it's going to come down to the specific matchups in terms of how they balance out with both teams. But Duncan has just been, it's no secret that he's had a phenomenal season. And a lot of that's been defensively where he just doesn't, he looks like a completely different player than he did a year or two ago. And having that kind of increase allows them to play Thiago Splitter in different situations. It allows them to kind of recontextualize a lot of what they do. And, even having, a guy who doesn't jump on any of his shot blocks, just having him be a half step faster in his rotations really dramatically changes a lot of the way that the Spurs execute.
I think that my concern only with them is will Manu be healthy? If Ginobili is able to be even 80% of what they needed him to be last year, I don't know. I still don't know that I believe they can win a title, but if he's up to his old tricks, like I could be convinced.
I mean, I think the weird thing with them, and this is something that kind of came up last year, is that the West, in a way, is a much difficult and much more taxing challenge than maybe even a potential final series would be. And, Zach Lowe and a lot of other writers kind of tackled that at length, how they really match up with the Heat in a really interesting way. And if any team could kind of catch the Heat sleeping and could kind of work with their offensive execution to just blitz the hell out of them and kind of, exploit some of those over rotations, some of that extra ball pressure, it would be San Antonio. And so, I think they're going to have a really difficult time getting by the Clippers and the Thunder, as would pretty much anyone. But the big question would be at that, supposing that they were able to do that, I mean, I think they would match up kind of favorably, maybe even more so than some of the other Western Conference contenders. Now, I don't think it'll matter because I think the Heat would still win because they're that good. And I just trust their ability to reach out and flip that switch whenever they need to. But San Antonio would definitely provide a really interesting case study in kind of how these variables like corner threes, the way they penetrate from the top of the key with Tony Parker. I mean, that's a really hard action to control. And I think it could, match up really interestingly with Miami.
Yeah, it makes you think of that Dallas matchup where, they similar, like a lot of early offense, a lot of getting into their motion quickly and swinging the ball around the three-point line. One thing I've been kind of trying to monitor, and I'm curious where you make of this, is Kawhi Leonard as a playmaker. Like, it just seems to me that
Did he die for you too, Zach? Okay.
ask me my questions. It's so sad. No, I'm trying to say is they're gonna trap Kawhi Leonard. The Thunder are. They're gonna use Cephalosha's length to make Parker give the ball up. I think I misspoke and said Leonard originally. And then the Spurs struggled in that series to attack once Parker gave it up. Ginobili did okay, but Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard wasn't quite ready, which is why they had to play Steven Jackson. One thing I'm curious is, Kawhi Leonard's played much more assertively and better offensively. Is he playing well enough that he can provide some sort of, counterbalance to Parker on the weak side?
Right, and that's going to be the big question that determines the series in a lot of ways. Just because Ginobili, I mean, as Zach said, especially relative to how he was playing early last year, just isn't the same player. I mean, that's why the percentages are way down. He's still doing a lot of the things that Manu does, but not at the same levels and not quite as consistently. So, Kawhi is going to be a huge, huge part of that. I've been really impressed with the stuff he's done. It's mostly just kind of straight line drive things, kind of blowing by defenders. But, even just putting the ball on the floor, I think he's a lot more effective than some people give him credit for. He's a lot more effective than Danny Green, certainly, in that regard. And, hopefully effective enough to kind of keep Steven Jackson off to the side somewhere. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's going to be a really tough situation. And the way that, even Durant has evolved defensively, I think could make this really, really tough for all of the Spurs players to do the little things that they need to do to support Parker and Duncan.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. Everyone say hi to my roommate, Jake. And we'll have to do this again. It's been too long, Rob. You can read Rob on Sports Illustrated and also follow him on Twitter at Rob Mahoney.
Yeah, I'm never, ever coming back here. Please don't invite me again. This has been an altogether miserable experience. And, yeah, no, get out of here.
All right, thanks, man.
We had
Rob sort of had a steam on his diss track there at the end, but that's all right.
Rob and I had lunch on Monday in Dallas, and he had the exact same ending for me, saying this is awful, don't ever come back.
Yeah. On a quick personal note here, so my roommate is switching jobs, so he's been like home in my office for my office time, but we're getting through it. It's okay. So don't worry out there.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I've got nothing. I'm like Rob's diss track right now. I've got no response.
All right. Well, thanks to everyone who watched. Thanks to Rob. Thanks for James for producing. And we will see you on Tuesday. Go Calderon and the Pistons.
I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious Analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.